everybody. We are back for our second picture book. And this one is a book about books. The cover of this book caught my eye. And when I picked it up and read it, I thought it had a really great message. And it also inspired a short film that you can watch on YouTube. I'll put the link to that with this in Google Classroom. The book is called The Fantastic Flying Books of Mr. Morris Lessmore, and it is by William Joyce. So I hope you like it. Morris Lessmore loved words. He loved stories. He loved books. His life was a book of his own writing, one orderly page after another. He would open it every morning and write of his joys and sorrows, of all that he knew and everything that he hoped for. But every story has its upsets. One day, the sky darkened and the winds blew and blew, till everything Morris knew was scattered, even the words in his book. You see his house is upside down. He's sitting there. There's his scattered words. He didn't know what to do or which way to go, so he began to wander and wander. It's him right here on the road. Then a happy bit of happenstance came his way. Rather than looking down, as had become his habit, Morris Lessmore looked up. Drifting through the sky above him, Morris saw a lovely lady. She was being pulled along by a festive squadron of flying books. Those are all books instead of like flying balloons like in that movie Up. Reminds me of that. Morris wondered if his book could fly, but it couldn't. It would only fall to the ground with a depressing thud. The flying lady knew Morris simply needed a good story, so she sent him her favorite. The book was an amiable fellow and urged Morris to follow him. Do you recognize that character? And the book has legs. Morris is kind of like, hello, book. The book led him to an extraordinary building where many books apparently nested. Can you guess what building they're going into? Morris slowly walked inside and discovered the most mysterious and inviting room he had ever seen. It was filled with the fluttering of countless pages, and Morris could hear the faint chatter of 1,000 different stories, as if each book was whispering an invitation to adventure. Then his new friend flew up to him and landed on his arm. It held itself open as if hoping to be read. The room rustled to life, and so Morris's life among the books began. I love all the little dancing books here. Morris tried to keep the books in some sort of order, but they always mixed themselves up. The tragedies always cheering up, or always needed cheering up, and would visit with the comedies. The encyclopedias, weary of facts, would relax with the comic books and fictions. All in all, it was an agreeable jumble. Morris found great satisfaction in caring for the books, gently fixing those with fragile bindings and unfolding the dog-eared pages of others. I love the idea of the books helping each other, like the tragedy books needing to be cheered up by the comics, and the fact books needing a little bit of comic and fiction. I think that's a fun little thought. Sometimes Morris would become lost in a book and scarcely emerge for days. I know the feeling, Morris. Here he is, lost in the book. Morris liked to share the books with others. Sometimes it was a favorite that everyone loved, and other times he found a lonely little volume whose tale was seldom told. Everyone's story matters, said Morris, and all the books agreed. At night, after all the stories that needed telling had been told, and everyone had settled down to their proper places on the shelves, the great big dictionary would get the last word. Zzz. It was then that Morris Lessmore would once again write his own book. He wrote of his joys and sorrows, of all that he knew and everything that he hoped for. The days passed. So did the months. And then years and years. And Morris Lessmore became stooped and crinkly, but the books never changed. Their stories stayed the same. Now his old friends took care of him the way he had once cared for them, and they read themselves to him each night. Then, one day, he filled the last page of his book. He looked up and said with a bittersweet sigh, I guess it's time for me to move on. The books were sorry, but they understood. Morris put on his hat and took his cane. As he went to the door, he turned and smiled, then waved goodbye. I'll carry you all in here, he said, and pointed to his heart. The books waved their pages, and Morris Lessmore flew away, and as he flew, he changed back to the way he'd been, that long ago day when they had first met. The books were quiet for a while, and then they noticed that Morris Lessmore had left something behind. It's his book, said his oldest friend. Inside was Morris's story, all his joys and sorrows, all that he knew, and everything that he hoped for. Then the books heard a small, expectant sound. There, in the doorway, was a little girl. She looked around with wonder. Then something fantastic happened. Morris Lessmore's book flew up to her and opened its pages. The girl began to read, and so our story ends as it began, with the opening of a book. And there's her hands opening his book again. Which I just think the message of that book, I love the line that says every story matters. And everybody has a story that needs to be told. And I love that Morris Lessmore took the books and just made them a part of who he was and made them a part of his heart. And that's why I think it's important to keep reading, and even when we're not together, to share stories with you so that you can keep hearing stories and enjoying them, because I think books are one of the best ways to go places when we're kind of stuck where we are. So I hope you enjoyed that story, and I hope you'll come back tomorrow. Not sure what book we'll read tomorrow, but I know it'll be a good one. Miss you guys. See ya.